Satnam, yogis and yoginis. Hello, welcome back. One more video. Today we're going to be talking about bandhas. And this is in response to a request from somebody who was watching the videos from the mantra course, I believe it was. And in the comments, they asked me whether I could talk about Mula Bandha. I'm going to talk about bandhas in general, not just Mula Bandha, but all of them, the three main ones. And so I just wanted to say this. This is your way of interacting with me. If you have an interest on some particular topic, just write it in the comments and I can explore it here in some future video when I am ready for that. At that time, I was a few months ago, I couldn't, because I was in the middle of the mantra course, but now we are ready to talk about it. So today we're going to be talking about what are bandhas in general, what is the use of them, how do they affect our body and our mind and our spirit, how to apply them, and then we will go through some exercises on how to do them, how to learn how to do them, and also one very interesting exercise on how, particularly Mula Bandha, but Mula Bandha and Jalandhara Bandha, they can happen naturally. These bandhas can happen naturally by doing a sort of meditation with the breath, and then the bandha just comes in naturally, which is the way I was taught it was like the natural way it was created, the original bandhas. So this is something to look forward to in this video. So let's start with it. Bandha, what are they about it? Let me start by writing the word. And as you know, I am specialized in sounds and mantras, and even though bandha is not a mantra itself, the word bandha has some sounds. So let's begin with the word itself. We're going to be talking in general about bandhas. And we know that English words and Indian words, in particular Sanskrit words or Gurumukhi words, they have the same root. The root is called Proto-Indo-European, which means that there was a language out of which both the English language and Sanskrit come. So they come from the same root. So when we look at a word like this, bandhas, it's nice always to reflect how is this word in my language, and do I have a similar one? So bandhas, we do have a similar word, which is band, a band. And it is connected. They are very much related to each other. And when we generally translate, when we talk about bandhas in general in yoga, we talk about a contraction, some sort of lock, some tightening of some physical muscles, which creates some sort of lock. And we talk about how the energy moves with this lock. But the band, a group of people, no? A band is more like, in Spanish, a banda could be like a group of friends, almost like a gang, but with no negative connotation, just a group of friends. And in English, a band could be also like a group of musicians, yeah? A friend, some friends, 5 or 6 friends or more, a philharmonic band it could be, and they get together to play some music. So this contraction and tightening, which generally implies a lot of effort and pressure, when we think about it like a music band, there is no such pressure in it, but it's more like a get-together, and all together we make something nice and harmonious, yeah, all together. I like this idea because we often use a metaphor when we talk about nadis, like they are a musical instrument. We talk about our physical body like the body of a guitar, and the strings in our body are the strings of the body of the guitar would be the nadis in our body. And so as the music is playing with a guitar, the same way energy is vibrating and moving throughout our physical body. Maybe we will explore this metaphor some other day. It's a very lovely and beautiful metaphor on how energy works throughout our body. But if we take that metaphor as well, imagine your body being a guitar and the nadis being the strings, then creating locks, creating these bandhas, like, Jalandhara Bandha, would be like pressing on the on the string to make music. And that, it doesn't have to be aggressive, you know. And sometimes when we think about bandas, it's like there's a lot of aggression there. But, you know, plucking a guitar can be just musical and beautiful, and it's just something that you do. You have to create the pressure to make the music, but not in an aggressive way. Otherwise, that is going to communicate with the music. And I would say that that aggression can communicate in our body as well if we use the bandhas in such an aggressive way. So that's what I'm pointing to right now with the metaphor of the music. If we're going to be like a music band, then let's make music with our bodies, with our energy. And when we are thinking, for example, about Mula Bandha, and we think about the muscles which are being contracted, instead of contracting them, can we think of them like a band of musicians, you know, 4 friends, and we get together and we want to make music together, so you are putting them together in that way. If we think about it in that way, we may find a more natural expression and of what's happening. Let's suggest this for a moment. Let's just explore this, yeah? I haven't heard it anywhere, by the way. This is just my own interpretation of the word, how it sounds, and how we could relate to it in this way. So let's just explore it. Yeah, why not? As I mentioned quite a few times already, if you've watched my videos, I am a researcher. I like to research, and I used to research engineering and science, and now I'm researching the human body and consciousness and yoga in general. So I take these concepts and I experiment with myself, and I encourage everyone to do this, not just take these teachings and just read a piece of paper in a book and then just try to follow the directions as best as you can, but also experiment and explore and experience. And I think this is a new age, the age that we are living right now, the 21st century. We are where we need to, you know, find our own wisdom and apply it in our own way. So let's take it in this way. A group of muscles which get together, and by getting them together, they create some effect, some musical and harmonious effect in our system of physical energy and maybe even a spiritual state. I would take it that way. Now, bandha, the word bandha, has some sounds. It could be, you know, when whichever yogi in the Himalayas decided that this was going to be called bandhas, he could have decided some different word, but he used the word bandha. And the sound B and the sound D, they have some particular meaning. Yeah, there is some meaning conveyed with that sound. It's not that the sounds have meaning, but how many words with that sound have a particular meaning. So as usual, I like to explore that. Even before talking about how to do the bandhas. What are bandhas, right? So you see me with this book very, very often, Goes in the Word. I love the book. And first of all, what is the letter B? And we talked a lot about this. If you want to more details on sounds, you can go to the mantra course where I go through every letter and the meaning of the letter and how is it found in words, in our own name, in mantras, and how does it apply. And I went through the Mool Mantra course explaining how to apply it to a particular example, which is the Mool Mantra. Now I'm applying it also to different words, like in this case, bandha. So the letter B is an accumulation of pressure behind the lips and then a release of the pressure. The lips are like a barrier, and then it has to be born out of the mouth. Yeah, it's like a baby being born. The sound has to be born in that way. So that's the general idea of the B. Let me just write a few things from the book just to put it. It's nice because we have the B and the D in the same page, so we're not going to have to be moving around the book. But it says that in the B there is something, one thing is lesser, one thing is not. So there's two things and one is lesser, no? And then it's talking about high pressure within, low pressure without, like a bubble on the surface of the sea waiting to burst. So there is a blocking of any opening until the pressure is too great and then it blows out. So this is really about how we produce the sound, it's actually conveyed in the words. It happens in the words that we utilize that have that sound. So let's think about this for a moment. So there is a higher pressure and lower pressure, and the pressure is being released through the B sound. Without the releasing of the sound, there would be no B. It would just be, yeah? There would be no B. Yeah, it's just the accumulation of pressure. So the sound has to be released. Now that is going to give me a little clue that Mul band, Jalandhar band, these bands that we are generally applying as one effort that we do, we generally think I'm doing the work while I'm doing the effort, but we don't pay attention to, generally, I'm just saying, what happens when we let go of that pressure. And I would venture to say that letting go is very important as well. I don't know if it's just as important as when you're holding the pressure, but it's very important. Now, we do the bandhas as like a mounting, like increasing pressure, so that, the way I've heard it in some books, it's just like a hydraulic pressure, accumulating hydraulic pressure to make the energy go up. And that truly happens, that is an effect that it happens. But I believe there is something happening also when you release. So when we are going to go into the experiential part of this video, we're going to go and explore what happens when you create the contraction and what happens when you release the contraction. In some of the keys of yoga is not just about tensing the body and activating a particular physical part of the body, but it's in the release of the tension of that posture when the healing happens and when the clearing of the nadis happens. No? So if you are holding let's say a very, very simple posture, like this, right? I'm laying down on the ground, I'm holding my knee and I'm pressing the knee towards my chest. And I invite everyone to try this. Just find a yoga mat, lay down, hold the knee to the chest. Before doing that though, just scan your body and then hold the knee to the chest, and then for a minute or so, and then let it go. And the moment you let go, if you are aware and you are sensitive enough to pay attention to how the energies move, and you develop that consciousness, awareness of the body, of the energy in the body, and the sensitivity to feel it, when you let go the leg, you could feel how if the nadi that goes through the leg, some of the nadis that go through the leg were kind of stuck, they can open up and the energy starts moving. So the energy can get stuck in nadis for many reasons, like, for example, your diet. If you eat meat or fish, that's going to be clogging your energy channels in the body. But I'm not going into judgment. I'm just saying, this is what happens. This is the consequence of what happens. And I'm also trying to avoid that if you do this exercise and you don't feel it, I don't want you to feel like, oh yeah, so Ardaas is saying I'm not feeling it because I'm not sensitive enough. I mean, that's not the point, yeah? The idea is that as we are developing our sensitivity, we are becoming more aware of this. I myself didn't feel it for a long time, and then at some point I remember in a particular workshop when I was starting to feel the nadis, and I could feel them very, very clearly going through my body. And it was through simple exercise of tension and release. So all this to say that bandhas are not just about the tensing and the contraction, but it's about, I'm thinking of it more like, let's get together and then let's let it go. And in that let it go, feel what's happening and feel the movement of the energy that naturally wants to happen. So I invite everyone to explore that. That letter B was already telling that there is a pressure and it blows up. There is a letting go. Yeah, there is an opening of the pressure. It can be like blowing up, like that. That's very like explosive. It can also be like a sweet release. That's the B. Now, what does the D say? Well, D is a door, and it divides spaces. Yeah, and it's a gate midstream in an ongoing process. It says that D is a very wet phoneme. Now that's interesting for us because energy moves like water. And in fact, you can, I was giving the exercise, giving the example of that workshop where I was. It was a workshop on yoga therapy. And I was like, it was taught by Dr. Boli. That was a long time ago. It was very, very interesting workshop. And Dr. Boli is a researcher. I believe he was a medical doctor. So he would take some of the classic texts. He was a Sanskrit scholar as well. So he would take the classic texts, retranslate them, and then experiment with them. And he would do research like, okay, this says that lowers the fever. Okay, take the measurement of the temperature, do the exercise, take the measurement again, and let's see what happens, right? So he was putting to test a lot of the yogic teachings. And anyway, in this workshop, I learned this. There was, after a week of good, healthy diet and bringing a lot of awareness to the nadis, doing this exercise of bending the knee and holding the knee, and then letting it go. The moment that I let it go, at that very moment, I could feel clearest than I never felt before. Yeah, the clearest than I had never felt before. One nadi going through all the way my leg up to the bottom, the sole of the feet, of the sole of my foot, one foot particularly, and I could feel like a very clear line. It was a nadi, but I felt it like a tube in which there was some cold milk was being poured. I don't know why milk, but that was the feeling. The feeling was like milk is flowing through my little tube. And it was so clear I could draw it with a pen throughout my leg, down to the sole of my foot. So that movement of energy was so clear. It was after the release, and it was fluid. It was like a wet feeling. So here, reading this wet phoneme, when Margaret Magnus says, D is a very wet phoneme. To me, it's connecting to this aspect of the water, flowing through. And so it's a door. Let's take it in that way. It's a door, and there is something wet crossing through the door, because the bee is telling us it has to go through. Otherwise, it's just, So what is this going through? The bandhas are something that we generally associate to the three granthis. I already have a video on this, on the three caves, and then the three granthis, which are like the three knots, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And these knots are like a lock, and every lock has a key. Now the key, interestingly, is something that we generally call a lock, which is the bandha. The Mula bandha, Uddiyana bandha, and Jalandhara bandha are the three locks which actually unlock the granthis, the knots, and so the energy can go through. So there is a barrier, and there is a knot, there is a granthi, and through the bandha, we can get the energy to go through the door, the D. Now the H is a aspirated sound, so it's not bandhas, it's bandhas. And that H sound is going to stimulate two things. One is there's more air, so there's going to be air involved in this. Air always implies consciousness, but in this case, because we are saying D is a very wet phoneme, we're talking about energy like water flowing. We can also think about nadis and vayus. Nadis are more like the liquid aspect of the prana moving, flowing through us. Vayus being like the winds also flowing through us, because actually the word flow, it is utilized both for liquids and for fluids. And for winds, for air currents. Now I'm thinking physics, but the same equations that describe the movement of the winds are the same equations that describe the movement of water. I think it's called fluid dynamics. There's a set of differential equations which describe the movement of both. So very interesting that in the body, in the physical body, we have, not really physical because it's more subtle than physical, the energy, but we have these nadis and we have these vayus and we have this water and we have this air. and they are both moving. And there is water with the air and there's air with the water. Just like in the air, there's humidity, right? And in any water is H2O, so there is like oxygen and there is like, that's also kind of like air. So there is bubbles in the water, we could say, right? There's humidity in the air, there's bubbles in the water, there's water and air and water, there is nadis and there is values, and there is this, all these energies flowing. The word is flow, and it applies to both. So all this is just from the word bandha. This is how far I go when my mind applies to, to one sound, one word. This is how far I go with my mind. Like, wow, okay, why did a yogi in the Himalayas call these bandhas? And then I go into, there's a barrier has to be crossed, there is a door that has to be open, and there's going to be a group of friends getting together, and when it's released, there's going to be a flowing, and there's going to be crossing through the door. I don't know, this is how I find my inspiration in the practice, doing these simple things that yogis have done for thousands of years. But I like to explore this way of thinking about them. And I don't know, I've never heard teaching about the release of the bandha and the crossing through, but to me it makes a lot of sense. I understand about this unlocking the grantis through the bandhas, and to me when I think about this through the meaning of the sound, it just makes sense. So let's take it in that way. But I would suggest also, if you want to know more about these 3 notes, the 3 levels, that you go and watch those videos where I talk about the caves, and the 3 caves and the 3 locks, the 3 grantis. And there's so many things that are 3. Then I have another video on triads. Yeah, and there's all these 3 things like God and so many things, yeah. So I will not go into that anymore. I think that's enough publicity for the channel. You can go if you want to watch those videos. But anyway, this was like a good introduction to what bandhas are. And I'm exploring new formats of the videos to see if they are more useful to people. So sometimes a smaller format may help for some people, I understand. So what I'm gonna do with this video is to separate the idea behind what are bandhas from the actual practice on how to do the bandhas. So this is this was the first part of the understanding bandhas, and then after this there will be the other part in which we go into the practice and we explore how to apply Mulban, how to apply Uddiyana, Jalandhara Bandha, and this other kind of meditation which creates the feeling naturally. So if you're interested, please go to the next part of the video when it comes available. And as always, if this is enough for you, then thank you very much for dropping by. Put a like, a comment, subscribe if you haven't, and see you next time. Sadnam.